as I've had to be like a manager or like create a certain culture, that's been really important to me. So like that's one of the biggest rewards or pieces, like compliments that anyone can give to me and have given, is just that
like. Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you for joining another episode, tuning in to the Connect Over Coffee. With us today, we have LaToya Fisher. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. LaToya is the Recreation Program Supervisor for the City of Greenbelt, Maryland, and fellow Shepherd alum, Rams for Life. Let's go. All right, so to get us started, we kick us off with a 2-minute drill. It's just rapid fire questions, going to come at you back to back. So as quick as you can. And here we go. All right.
Awesome.
First up, coffee or tea?
Tea.
All right. That's been a fan favorite lately.
Chai tea, always.
Favorite sports team?
Ooh, see, I don't really have a favorite team because I like players. So like my dream has always been to hang out with Shaq because I just want to dance with him. So
fair enough. You already answered our next rapid fire question. So favorite athlete, Shaq.
I mean, yeah, if I'm going out and hanging with someone, Shaq. Yeah, but like current players, definitely KD.
All right. Fair enough. I like it. Favorite sports movie?
Ooh, favorite sports movie? Probably the Mighty Ducks, but the one where they're in the Olympics.
Love it. All right. So we're foodies over here. So Baltimore food or DC food?
Really? That's harsh. I'm going to go with Baltimore food because I'm a seafood person and they got great crab cakes.
Love it. Would you rather coach or play?
Play.
All right. And then finally, what would your walkout song be, or just that song that gets you hype every single time?
Okay. So this is a little bit of a unique answer. It's the national anthem that Whitney Houston performed.
Epic.
She crushed it.
All time. That's amazing. Love that answer. All right, cool. So got through the 2-minute drill, got us all warmed up. So now it's game time, right? All right. So your career journey spans from customer service and promotions to software to teaching overseas, and now ultimately parks and recreation. Mm-hmm. As a former collegiate basketball player, and speaking for myself, I kind of knew I always wanted to stay in sports in some capacity.
Yep.
Did you have a vision for where you wanted your career to end up and kind of how you were going to get there?
I definitely had a vision. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. So my journey it's different, which I think is good because all the skills that I've acquired have helped me to be like kind of Jill of all trades, master of none, which makes me very versatile. But, you know, I got my degree in sports management. I actually started as a computer science major, but almost failed a programming class. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll do what I actually want to do. And my friend Katie, she actually was at Shepherd and she was like, why don't you be a rec and leisure? And I was like, okay. So I ended up doing that. And I loved when we used to have to do the different summer camps and stuff with the kids and when we had to do the different clinics and things like that. So was a huge fan of that. And actually Coach Ford, who was the assistant coach at the time, she talked about like always wanting to be the director of like basketball camps. And I just had so much fun and just loved the energy that I was like, that would be so cool. Like if during the year I could do after school programs and then in the summer, like all I did was just run basketball camps. So that's kind of what I saw myself doing. And, you know, I did some camps when I was home for the summer in between college. And then once I graduated, I got that first Sallie Mae bill. And I was like, well, I don't really have time to figure out exactly how I'm getting into sports. So I ended up taking a customer service job. And from there, did a little bit, did some other things, but then decided that I wanted to go to grad school at Georgetown. And they had just launched their sports industry management program. So I was like, all right, like I'm going to be more intentional about like actually trying to get into sports. And another big thing that I was passionate about was like community outreach and figuring out like, how can I make the biggest impact? So I was really drawn to different organizations. So it's funny because when I was in the Georgetown classes and they'd be like, all right, like, what do you guys want to do? A lot of people was like front office, GM, like own my own consulting company. And I was like, I want to work for like NBA Cares or like a players like nonprofit organization. So I happened to find Peace Players while I was in school. And it's a international nonprofit that uses basketball to bring together divided communities. So I was like, this is awesome. Like they had a fellowship and I was like, I want to apply. Like this is gonna like help me get on that path. So I ended up looking at the fellowship application. I had a ton of basketball experience, but I'd never lived overseas. So I decided that I wanted to take a break, a leave of absence, and teach English in Korea, South Korea, to see if like this is something I could actually do. Could I live in a foreign country where I know no one or nothing and like make it? So I did that for a year. I loved it. And I was like, if I don't go back, like I'm probably never going to finish my degree and I'll just, live this life instead. So I came back, I graduated, and I applied for the fellowship and I got accepted. And I ended up spending 2.5 years in the Middle East, so Israel, West Bank. And I lived in Jerusalem and I got to travel all up and down and do different like joint activities like with these kids. And there was a language barrier, but we did like all these leadership activities. So it was like the best of both worlds. Like I'm teaching the fundamentals, but I'm teaching them life skills.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they have no idea what I'm saying, but we're all having a good time. So it was just really awesome. And that kind of got me to the point where I was like, I really love programming at the core. Like it's that programming thing. So I came back and I ended up working for the city of Greenbelt, but it was more in like a coordinator role for the community center, which was more facilities based. Mm-hmm. So then I ended up going back to Peace Players as the director of Baltimore. And I thought I was always a little weird being a director because it was just kind of like, I'm not really a fan of like the fundraising and like networking and, like having to schmooze. Like I'm good at building relationships, but that's not my jam. Like I want to be on the court, like flossing with the kids, dabbing, like, in the action.
Yeah, absolutely.
I gave that a try and it was great. Like I did a good job and kind of affirmed that, I was able to do it, but I was like, I need to be closer to the programming, which is why I ended up coming back to Greenbelt in the program supervisor role. So I didn't really have like a path, but I just kind of knew like what I wanted to do. And I always thought like it had to be at the global level to make the biggest impact. But I've seen that, like I also did like basketball training on the side and a little bit of like coaching and things like that like it really doesn't have to be at such a large level, and it can be like right here locally where I do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just having a hand in the youth community and just letting them see that there are opportunities out there to do what they want to do, have fun, play basketball, that kind of stuff. And actually you touched on Peace Players International, which is a position of yours that I wanted to ask about. So it's kind of a two-parter. So throughout your career, is there a moment that sticks out that you're most proud of? And then on top of that, the work with Peace Players just seems like very rewarding and in your wheelhouse, of course, basketball. What was the most important thing you learned while working for Peace Players?
So I think one of the biggest moments that sticks out to me was we were doing one of our joint twinnings. And so we had kids from like the Israel side, and then we also had kids that were able to get visas for and bring over from the West Bank, where we did this big retreat up in the north. And there was this one activity that I had the kids do where they like go in these groups, and I don't tell them what they're doing beforehand, but basically I'm like, someone's going to draw a picture, someone's going to have to do like a dance, someone's going to have to do like a little fitness test. So one of the things I was like, all right, like 2 people can come up and you guys are going to like dance against me. We're just going to have like a dance contest. And so my Palestinian coach is translating it for the kid. And he's like, no, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, all you have to do, like, you can just come up and clap. Like, if you want to just like step or whatever, like, you don't have to like go all out. He's like, no. And I was like, all right. So then we start doing it. And they did a couple of activities. And then I'm like, all right, it's a dance competition. And I was like, who wants to go first? And he was like the first one to raise his hand. Really? And he comes up and he starts doing Dubka, which is like one of their traditional dances. Okay. And and he did it by himself and he like crushed it. So like it was the fact that I was able to create a space where, this kid had probably never really interacted with like a lot of Israeli kids before, Israelis in general. Like I created a space and we created a space where he felt safe enough and comfortable enough, despite the language barrier and all these fears, to just like come out and let his personality shine through. Like, I'm like, that's it. Like,
There we
that's
go.
one of the coolest things.
That's awesome. Yeah.
My God.
Right. And the fact that he just crushed it too. He was like, oh, I don't want to, embarrass anybody. No.
Right. Right. He's like, just kidding.
Yep. Here we go. That's awesome. So would you say from that, like the most important thing you learned is just like, being authentic, being yourself, like making sure these kids like feel comfortable around you?
Yeah, I learned the importance of creating a space where people can really like show up as themselves. And I think as I've had to be like a manager or like create a certain culture, that's been really important to me. So like that's one of the biggest rewards or pieces, like compliments that anyone can give to me and have given, is just that like they've never felt so supported, or they don't think they'll have such a good supervisor or boss.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Culture and support from the top, I feel like, is on the top of everybody's list now for where they want to work, who they want to work for, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I used to think it was like, sometimes in interviews they'll ask, is it more important what you do or who you work with? I used to always think it was like really important what I do. But now I'm like that's great. But like if who I work with is not working or is it's toxic or whatever, then forget about like what I'm doing.
Exactly. Because who you work with, like if they're good, then what you do is good,
Exactly. Yep.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. So speaking of these lessons that we learn, we always are continuing to grow as we move up in our careers and whatnot. And we always kind of look back and think like, wow, I wish I knew that then, or whatever it may be. So is there any shit you wish you knew? It's our little saying here, or advice that you would give your younger self or somebody just starting off in their journey?
Gosh, do we have another 30 minutes? Yeah, I think the biggest things would be like don't be afraid to try different things. Like I used to be a little bit embarrassed that a lot, like my resume was kind of like all over the place, or I only stayed at a place like 1 or 2 years. But like don't be afraid to try new things to like get that fit. And two, don't be afraid to negotiate. Like I'm not the best at advocating for myself, but I'm getting much better. But I didn't like negotiate my first salary until like 35. Like I just accepted it. Oh, like this is it. Like this is what I'm gonna get. But yeah, definitely like advocate, because no one else is gonna do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely like come across that as a problem, negotiating, because you just think like some people have like imposter syndrome. They're like, I want this job, but like I don't think I'm qualified. But yeah, always like be your biggest advocate. I've learned that along the way for sure.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about like, don't be afraid to try new things, because going back to what you said in the very beginning, a Jill of all trades, master of none, like people that want you to hone in on one thing are just minimizing your talents and what you do. So I definitely think it's great to have as broad a spectrum of skills as you can. So love that.
Yeah, I think if you're young, take a couple of years off. Like in the Middle East, they don't go to college right away. They have to serve in the military and on the Israeli side, and then they'll usually do like a gap year or two, and they don't go to university till they're in like 22, 23, 24.
Yeah.
And they've had some life experience, and now it's like, all right, like maybe I want to study this. Like I think it's tough to figure out the rest of your life at like 18.
Yeah, definitely. So love that. This was awesome. So that kind of concludes everything. I love this chat. Yeah. Like I said, we like to get in, get dirty, get the answers, questions answered, and have a good time. But if anybody wants to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and of course, LinkedIn. And we're looking forward to connecting soon. Thank you.